Take note that I am speaking to this geometry. Nice little script. We're going to cover the last bit of params, utilities. We'll leave the fitness landscape in Galapagos, maybe goat, for the next one, and we'll end the script with this fun FireFly audio geometry. Kind of caterpillars down or centipedes down, and then follows my voice. Test. Fun. Okay, let's turn that off. We'll do that in the end. We'll do that on the last section. Just group this, and we'll just hit disable. All right, what I have is I want to go through from the relay through to the data output. Let's do this fairly quickly. Relay is basically, here's a number slider, 16 going to a panel. Well, relay is a way of jumping into the tracks of the train and diverting it. So relay, all you have to do is double click on a wire and you'll get a relay, and double click again and it'll disappear. Really nice tool. Let's go into Suirify, S-U-I-R-I-F-Y, which means simplify consistently. We'll use the example of bringing in a range of circles and looking at it as an exploded tree with paths on it. To simplify that path, it removes all the consistent numbers, so it really only has the essentials, 0 through 10, with the circles grafted on each one. And simplify consistently does exactly the same thing. So there's been talk of putting the Suirify input into either simplified tree or in clean tree. I just put them both up as an example to analyze the data. Clustering is pretty cool. You make a script and you take your inputs and you put them on one end of where you want to cluster a script, and you put your outputs on the other end. Then you select everything within that and either hit your middle scroll wheel and go to cluster, or you can go up and find cluster in the menu up here. And double clicking on those custom transformations, I should have shown you what it did. Basically it takes a series of geometries, finds the volume center, and rotates them in a progressively higher range in the Z axis. And you just click here, save, and you'll see that I've chosen to make a box and transform it into a polar array of it. And I have control over those boxes by inputting them to the domain end, 0 to 2 in radians, which is buried in there because I don't want to write it every time. And then the geometries go in and they move progressively more. So if you have two geometries, it'll be very subtle the first turn and then the other turns. Nice and simple. And that's to get you away from having to write this script every time. You can just put those up in the file. You can go to create user objects, which is what I've done in my transformations. And I have a series of user objects I can just grab and pull out, put in a series of geometries, bring in a rotation 0 to 2 or more in pi, and I end up with those geometries moving. That's a nice little tool. Enough said. We actually might use this down here just for fun. Here is a very good tool. It's data input and data output. And you start with kind of data input by making a bunch of geometries and then put it through a series of transformations and put them in, save your file under your data. And let's just pull up our Bifocals and see what everything's named here. Pull it into your data output. Now everything will be referenced to that in the document when you pull in a data input. So all those geometries are transformed. And there's where they were. And let me just take off this little gene pool item we'll look at next. Preview off. You see all the original geometries right here, which happen to be curves, points, reps, and surfaces. And you'll see all the affected geometries over here. I was playing around a little bit here, but I think it's kind of nonsensical. It's not that important. I'm going to pull my geometry back into there and take this one off and take that geometry and put it there as well. And that'll update. It should be fine. You can kind of ignore it, and there's all your new trim surfaces as things move. All right, well, let's go down to gene pool, And all these fun tools that are in the params, at least know that they exist. And we're going to jump into here, and I'm going to make a pretty basic object preview on. I'm going to make a circle, and in doing so, I've got a length of it. Circles don't behave like lines so much, so I was having trouble with the gene pool tool. I decided to blast between the points and interpolate a curve and leave it open. And then I've reparameterized that pipe. And that's pretty cool because the gene pool is a system. And I'm using this example where your radii and your parameters have to have the same number. And I've actually thrown a cap on that. You have to set your first parameterization from 0 to 1, and anything in between. You have to have it in progressively increasing order. Otherwise, you get this strange stuff. I mean, you get these weird foldovers, which it still works. I mean, you can still do that from your parameter. You have this really good parametric control, which is fun. But you also have this ability to change its thickness. And I use this quite a bit. Recently, I've been using ranges and graph mappers for it. But this is nice because in Edit, you can go ahead and set scales to anything you want. So you wanted the radius only to be 2.5 max, 2.4. It's going to affect that quite a bit. And then when you want to go in here and change what's happening, you can right-click on and just do a random 1% change, a 10% change, or you can really blast it with 100% change. And that's a wonderful way to change geometry pretty quickly with the gene pool, working through this kind of idea of a reparameterized curve. And you don't have to just use a curve. I use it quite a bit on that because the variable pipe demands a curve. Anyway, that's it. I promised you this little end script, so I'm going to hit preview off. And actually, it's probably best if I just take everything here and just hit disable. And now let's go in and enable this strange script to end with at 6 minutes in. You're like, what is happening? Well, that's all tapping into, and I meant to do this with the data recorder last time. The data recorder is the basis of it. I'm picking up sound capture. The thing to remember with this is when you set your timer by bringing in a little timer tool and connecting it up, all you have to literally do is take that and drag it out. That's a little tricky here with the command, drag it out, and it's disconnected. If you set your timer to record data and you connect like this, it doesn't go into the front or the back end. It's something to remember. You're going to have to set your time period to match that. So if you're at 50 milliseconds, and you can change that on the interview, you're going to have to set your data here to match that. 1 being a second, and anything else. Actually, I think 1 being 100 milliseconds. And then you can go all the way up to 10 seconds, but you have to match your time period with your timer. And then your Boolean toggle, you can start and stop your script, which is kind of nice. And since that's the only thing open, let's just leave it running. You have to keep things fairly simple. I'm recording the data, but also in record data, you've got to have a data limit. And I set a limit to 50. If I didn't, this would just record forever. And I'd have just more and more objects coming in and in and in. So I want to set it to about 20, so my script still is pretty fast. The geometries are simple in here, but look at volume. It gives you data. Start thinking about getting data. And this, of course, records 20 bits of data. And it says, okay, let's cap it at 0 to 19. What I ended up doing was taking that through a multiplier and actually doing a division tool on it to affect not only the z-axis of moving my polygons up in the air, but also affecting the range of how I'm going to position this and move it around in a rotation. And I've chosen a plane. I've chosen all 3 planes to plug in. I'm not sure if one's overriding the other. It's hard to say. Which is kind of interesting, but I have to bring that plane also, and I usually don't write backwards into the plane of my rectangles. My rectangles are very thin, which isn't very exciting. My ranges, if I brought this back into the X tool, you see my boxes are more like that. And they're not surfaces, but you can see how they're kind of pulling out a sphere. And then I actually took a list item on the faces, and I have an ability to put my sphere on different areas of those faces. But since there's one face, that's fine. I could have taken vertices and had it moving around on different vertices on the square. And actually, it would be pretty low count. So it's kind of a fun little thing. And one thing will keep an eye on your script amount. And then the breps, I chose a mesh sphere to go on here, not a brep. So I could take the count down to these 3, so it's still fast moving. If I start taking the count up, you can see I start slowing down the script. So if I put in a sphere, it would really slow down. Let's leave it at 3. And let's just think what would happen if I took the not the polygons, but the rectangles, and used that as geometry. But let's say I surfaced it first, and this may crash my program, but put it into a surface and then bring that into the geometries. And now you see what was the effect on that. And that's why you want your profile layer on. Now we're into milliseconds. No, it's moving just as fast. And in that breath, let's reduce the, let's take command, take the X off again, and there we go. We have this, and what's happening is my spheres are not in the right breadth position. They're all at the start. So there we go. Now they're at the ends of those columns. So I'll just sing a little bit here for you. I'll do it. Hello. A, B. So you can see how you can build some geometries, very interesting shapes like this. And you can learn to bake and use Python nodes and have this recorded. I think it's pretty fun stuff. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take out my this plane. I'm going to take out this plane. I'm going to have just one. And I think it does override. So if that's the plane, then this one is in this position, and this one's in this position. And that's just vertical, so the XY plane is not going to do anything. So let's plug this one in. And since that goes that way, I was just playing around with this, put in shift, it overrides. The second one that comes in overrides it. So there's little things you want to know about, but choosing your position, having fun with it. Thanks for watching. That's a fun little script. You might want to build geometry using the FireFly nodes, and that's getting in the FireFly plugin. Not only can you pull from audio, you can go in here and grab the visual and do a video snap video stream recorder and start grabbing data out of this, which could be fun. But you'll have to kind of get into that. All right. Thanks very much for watching.